This video is sponsored by Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus. In my never-ending quest to paint every single color and chapter of Space Marines in Warhammer 40,000, I want to take a look at the 21st Founding chapters, often called the Cursed Founding chapters. The Imperium found an old gene editing laboratory and thought it would be a perfect opportunity to fix a lot of the problems with the current Space Marine gene stock. What ended up happening was they made a whole bunch of Space Marine successor chapters. Most of them turned to chaos, a lot of them turned into horrible mutant abominations, but some of them became some of the coolest and most unique Space Marine chapters ever to grace the pages of Warhammer 40,000. And the specific chapter that I want to look at today is the Black Dragons, one of the most interesting and chaotic Space Marine chapters known to the Imperium. They have a specific flaw with the organ that makes Space Marine bones grow extra dense. The Black Dragon's bones grow so dense that they form Wolverine-esque spikes coming out all over their body. They're vicious, they're evil looking, and they're a successor chapter to the Salamanders, the good guys of Warhammer 40k. And it's that kind of juxtaposition that makes the 21st Curse Founding so special. As the basis for my Black Dragons, I'm going to start off with an Assault Intercessor body for that more aggressive pose. I found this one in my bits bin. Once upon a time, I stole his hip armor plates, so that's one more thing that'll be unique about my Black Dragon. I started my conversion by shaving off the Imperialis. The Black Dragons are very loyal, but they don't necessarily flaunt it. After all, they're not very well respected in the lore, being constantly belittled by the other Space Marine chapters and scrutinized heavily by the Inquisition. Then I shaved off the extra knee armor and cut off his toes. Nothing says Black Dragons like open-toed power boots. For arms, I found an Assault Intercessor hand holding a knife. The Black Dragons love close combat. Their unique biology is tailor-made for it, and if bone swords can't get the job done, maybe this little knife will. And speaking of bone swords, for his right arm, I used this Intercessor arm and cut off the bolt pistol. Shaving down his trigger finger and smoothing things out gave me a nice closed Space Marine fist. And you know what else has Space Marine fists? That's right, today's sponsor. Are you looking to take the world of Warhammer 40,000 on the road? Then Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus is the game for you. Tacticus is a turn-based tactical game where you can control units from the world of Warhammer 40,000. Experience tactical action for hours on end with over 60 different champions from over 17 different factions. From Necrons, Orcs, Black Templar, Chaos, and more. You're sure to find the units from the army you love and use them to achieve total tactical supremacy. New this month is the Blood Angels faction. Collect shards to unlock Matineo, a jump pack Intercessor Sergeant, and the one, the only, Mephiston, the Lord of Death. Make sure to participate in every event to get as many shards as you can, and celebrate the 2-week-long anniversary of the game while you're here. If you're more interested in PvE, there are plenty of long-spanning campaigns and challenges to test the might of your units against wave after wave of enemies. Or join a guild and fight in PvP actions against over 3.5 million players from around the world. Follow the link in the description to join the growing community and become a master of Tacticus today. Then for his noggin, all Black Dragons develop a hard bony crest on their foreheads, and the most blessed of the Battle Brothers grow a blade-like horn. I shaved down a Space Marine mohawk, giving him a smooth chrome dome in preparation for this. The more out there Space Marine chapters are a really fun opportunity to get weird with it. On his Space Marine power plant, I thought back to some bits I have no business owning. A few years ago at Adepticon, I bought a cup of bits, and for some reason my cup, that I keep in this holiday dog themed Ziploc bag, has a bunch of Chaos Dragon barrel bits. I guess not many Chaos players actually glue these on, and I think they'll work perfectly as power plant exhaust decorations. I had so many bits I actually had options on which dragon heads were right for my Black Dragons. I ended up deciding on the stubby ones that are about the same size as the power plant balls. I nipped off the balls and then glued on my dragons, using some plastic glue to weld them into position. It looks pretty snazzy. If I was a Black Dragon player, I would be very tempted to cast and mold these pieces and have it on every Battle Brother. And I didn't forget about the balls. I threw them back into my bits bag, saving them for another project, one that needs some balls. Next up, the thing that makes the Black Dragon so horny, the horns. For this, I went to my Tyranids bits bin. Cracking open the seal, I forgot I own a bunch of 1st and 2nd edition Tyranids. Leave a comment below if you'd like to see some retro bugs make their way onto the channel. But for now, I need some claws. I cut the fingers off of a Genestealer hand and glued these onto his foot. His toenails are getting out of control. Then for his knee blade. For this, I took a scything talon and chopped it off so it conformed to the roundness of his knee pad. Then for the most famous aspect of the Black Dragons, the wrist blades. Everyone knows that when your bones are growing extraordinarily strong and fast, they also sprout from your wrist like blades. Same thing happened in Wolverine. For these, I used some Hormigaunt claws to make these wrist blades. Then for his head, I might have gone a little too far. I used the horn from a Swarm Lord. This fit, but it was a little bit more unicorn when it should have been a little bit more knife. I used my sanding twigs to shrink this horn down by about half. Then I used the sides of a file to add in some nicks to make these bones look a little bit more bony. The black dragons believe that these growths are a blessing from the Emperor and cover them in adamantium and sharpen them to a razor's edge. I glued my fellow together, and then for shoulder pads, I feel like he needed something unique. I found an old Mark III Space Marine shoulder pad, and for the other shoulder, a Chaos shoulder pad. The black dragons are loyal, but they ride the line. He really does look like a Chaos Space Marine. To make him look at least a little bit loyal, I gave him some pouches and a holster. I am really liking the black dragons. This would be an incredibly fun army to kit bash and convert. And if I was going to play them on the tabletop, even though they're a successor chapter to the salamanders, I would actually look to the blood angels for rules. And that has to do with the lore. The black dragons really love jump packs. They actually take the horniest battle brothers and they form them into elite squads with jump packs called Dragon's Talons. And I think the blood angels detachment is uniquely qualified to represent these troops. Their detachment rule, the Red Thirst, grants units who have just charged into close combat +2 strength on their weapon and +1 attack. And this is uniquely great on Assault Marines because Assault Marines have Hammer of Wrath. Every time they charge in, models that make it into base-to-base contact roll a d6, and on a 4-up they cause a mortal wound. So they're getting benefits on top of benefits to their charging. But speaking of fighting, once you're done handing out mortal wounds, you're punching for 60 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 6, AP -1, damage 1. That'll deal with most things. But if you really want to get nuts with it, you can spend a CP to pop Red Rampage, and that gives all 50 of those attacks lethal hits and lance. It gets absolutely bananas, and that feels very Black Dragons-y. To set my black dragons in an environment, I'm thinking a very alien world. The black dragons are not well liked by the wider Imperium. They don't even have a homeworld. They're a fleet-based chapter. So they are most likely stuck fighting on alien worlds. I'm thinking a rocky outcropping using some cork. I carved this on an angle and made up 3 triangles that I hot glued down to the base. Then I covered the middle and exposed base with some wood glue and sprinkling of pebbles and coarse sand. Now to attach my dragon. I don't think his one little toe is going to glue down well to the cork, so I drilled into his foot and inserted a paper clip that I then stabbed into the cork, giving him a much stronger connection. Now he's ready for paint. I primed him in black and then sprayed him with silver. The black dragons wear black armor, but just flat black paint armor is not much fun to look at, so I have to make it interesting, and I think metallic black armor would suit him well. I watered down some Black Templar contrast paint and then put this over all the armor, and then for the trim I left it silver and gave it a coat of Nuln Oil, using this to also darken some spots of his armor. I went back in with more Black Templar to darken the shadows and recesses of his armor even further. Then it was time for the bones. I mixed a tan and red brown together into a red beige, and I base coated all of his horns. I mixed in a little bit of black paint to darken this, and then mixed in more tan to lighten it. Doing many layers to create a gradient along his spikes. This gradient helps these parts to look like natural horn, so they stand out next to his smooth metal armor. After many highlights, I did some edge highlights with white and the bones were done. For his pouches and holsters, I chose a nice clean black leather look, doing a few edge highlights of gray and some micro scratches of light gray. Then for his symbol, the black dragon itself, which appears as a white dragon on their shoulder pads. You better believe Games Workshop has never made a decal for this. A Salamander's decal would probably work good enough, but I decided to freehand it, taking my sharpest paintbrush and working slowly and steadily. And you know what isn't slow but is always steady? That's right, our Patreon. For the month of August, subscribers to our Patreon will receive the Clone Expansion, a part 2 to our spaceship interior, with new wall sections for building out the grisly facilities of a cloning laboratory. Complete with examination tables / autopsy tables, cloning bays, and new doors. And the cloning doesn't stop there. The cloning towers are macabre monoliths drooped with pods full of fresh recruits or test subjects, depending on the needs of the mad scientist who operate them. Once I had the symbol looking good enough, on his right shoulder pad I freehanded the tactical arrow. This guy is technically an assault marine, but the assault symbol is hard to paint, so I guess he dropped his bolter somewhere. Then for his chest, I wanted to give him some more dragon iconography. I tried to match the symbol from the most recognizable piece of black dragon artwork. And I think my results were mixed. It's about right, but mine ended up looking more like the D&D 5th edition logo. On his knee pad, I painted a little number 12, adding a line through it to make it look fancier, and then I took some silver paint and made some tiny scratches all over his armor. The black dragons love to get up close in melee combat. On his knife, I painted on some quick and dirty non-metallic metals, using black and white to make some gradients and edge highlights. And for his eyes, I base coated his lenses with white paint and then used one of my all-time favorite colors, Army Painter Speed Paint Ghillie Doo. This is the perfect color for a sci-fi green glow. Now my dragon is almost ready for battle, the only thing left is his base, and I want to make something very alien. I took a purple-red color and airbrushed this all over the base, letting just a little bit of it spill onto his feet. And then I thinned down and mixed this color with black to darken the recesses. Then I dry brushed the base with a red-brown, which made for a surprisingly natural but otherworldly color that I finished off with some dark purple tufts. I don't remember why I bought these, but today, they're finally coming in handy. I really like how this base turned out. It complements the simplicity of the Black Dragon's armor. Its Army Painter war paints Moldberry Leather Brown and Gamer Grass Alien Purple Tufts, and it works together really nicely. I really like how this Black Dragon turned out. I bet I could show this to like 10 people and 9 of them would say this is a Chaos Space Marine, but no, it is in fact a Loyalist chapter, just very heavily converted. I've always wanted to do a really heavily converted army, and I have a Space Marine army, Black Templar, and I do a fair bit of kit bashing and converting, but it's not hardcore, it's easy stuff. It's like head swaps and an extra banner here or there. I would love to one day do an army where every single model is barely recognizable as the original kit. I definitely don't think it's gonna be Space Marines, but I would like to give it a try. It would have to be a low model count army, a little bit like Space Marines, and if anybody wants to work on their own Black Dragons, a little tip I would suggest is to use the Chaos Space Marine Possessed as your sergeants, captains, and lieutenants. They're a little bit extreme on the body horror, but if you toned it down enough and just gave them like one weird arm apiece, I think it would look really cool. And it has technically been 6,000 years since their inception. Maybe things with the Black Dragons have gotten a lot worse. Or maybe better. It all depends on how you look at it. The Imperium and the Inquisition don't like the Black Dragons very much, but I like them a lot. And maybe one day I will do a very heavily kit-bashed and converted army. In fact, I do have plans to do one day. Don't tell anybody, but it might be Sisters of Battle. A big thanks to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus. Don't forget to click the link in the description to join today.